Welcome back to the Save Point. It's good to have you here. Well, I don't need to explain what a save point is, do I? It's the place in between where you can just unwind a bit before proceeding to the next step, to the next phase of the game. It's before you go to sleep and you wake up for a new day. So, today I want to talk about out of bounds. Out of bounds in video games. Now, it's especially the case in video games where you're restricted in your ability to move around an area. In that, if a game has a lot of invisible walls, like in old games, in newer games you tend to have open worlds, where you can move about a bit more. But that is still, in and of itself, this is still that includes some boundaries. An open world is still enclosed by invisible walls, because game developers cannot render everything infinitely, an entire planet. When I was a child, I did not have a lot of knowledge about game making. I thought everything was sort of magical, great magic. Maybe even that things were realer than I thought they were. Well, it turns out actually that when you're an adult you realize, there's nothing outside the boundaries of video games, things are not rendered. If you somehow glitch out of bounds or take the camera out of the bounds, you can see it's nothing, there's nothing, just a void. But when I was a child, I wanted so dearly, so deeply to go and see what was outside. What was outside. For example, in Mario Galaxy, let's take Mario Galaxy as an example. You have these levels and these planets, but you have this immense one at the bottom that looks like maybe Earth-like in size. I wish I could have just gone there and seen and explored. Or in Zelda, going above the hills, carrying off time above the cliffs and seeing what was beyond the loading zones or beyond the deserts. Or my sunshine, actually, a little bit. My sunshine, you can of course see areas that are other levels. So in a way you can go to these areas that are out of bounds, but they're not really the areas themselves. But in general, even though my examples might not be that good, you understand the concept. I enjoy. I was really curious about what was beyond these invisible walls stopping me. Because in retro games, in old games, you had boundaries, very defined boundaries. And this always left up to your imagination. The desire to imagine what was beyond what you could see, beyond the mountains in the distance, beyond the dunes. What is this what are these buildings that you can see in the horizon? It's surely something that many gamers encountered in the past, which is why there's this fascination with getting out of bounds, not just for speedrun purposes or sequence breaking, but just to discover what lays beyond. Now, what is funny sometimes is when you do start going out of bounds, you can discover secrets. You can discover details that are there but unnecessary, because as a player you would never have figured out how, that they were there. But the developers, because they have all this creative power, made something, molded something out of the player's view, and it's there, and you have no knowledge of it except if you yourself break the boundaries. I wonder in a way if game developers, when they create their games, don't think a little bit about if someone manages to break out of these bounds, out of these invisible glass walls of air. Should we reward them in a way with some discoveries or interesting elements? Sometimes there's collision in areas that are beyond the horizon. Now, it's funny, for example, there's something that comes out to my head right now, inside there, in Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Well, there's these canyons around the map, where you can't cross them, there's air pushing you, so you can't sail above the horizon. But if you manage to make your way beyond there, through glitches, you can walk on it. It's a region outside of Hyrule, and as far as I remember, it's quite expensive. Like, it's a rather large area. Of course, it's mostly empty hills and all that, but it's there, and it's fascinating. Yes, there's nothing, but there's everything. It's a secret place. Now that when I say secret place, it's like when you're a child or a person, sometimes you feel like, oh, this is my secret garden. This place in the world is where I come back to. It's my little lair where I can craft a story and unwind. That's something actually that I think happened a lot in MMOs. Players would choose a spot in the world and call it their home. Now, I remember when I was a child and I used to play MMORPGs. I played a game called Dofus, MMORPG of French origin, and there was a map in a forest, pretty dense forest, but there was a hidden warp point in that forest that wasn't indicated on the visual aspect of the map. And when you went there, you entered a secret clearing with a house in there. And that house felt so intimate because it felt like a secret. Of course, everybody knew about it, but not many players were going to this house, whereas there were many cities completely filled to the brim with players, PvPing or trading. But this secret house in a little forest in the beginning of the game, well, that was a secret hideout for me. I remember being there with at least 2 friends. Dofus was an interesting game. I so wish there was like some sort of offline version, because it's kind of like a chess, an MMORPG game, a fantasy, and it's really cool. It's a lot of strategy. I don't think it reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics. Actually, it's kind of like a French fantasy. Final Fantasy Tactics, but a lot more cartoony with humor. Actually, there was a dungeon at around the beach area where there was a parody of SpongeBob. I think SpongeBob was the boss, but it wasn't SpongeBob. It was a messed up version of it, cruel and evil. But it was a parody in any case. But it was one of these dungeons, and actually the enemies on that beach, because you could play the game free to play. Or you could have the paid subscription that allowed you to go everywhere. But because there were a lot of children playing without subscription, the area around the beginning town was the free area. And outside that, if you exited the free bounds, you could still explore, but you could not interact with anything. You could not fight enemies or trade or anything. could just walk in the subscription paid areas, but not interact with anything. But in the free area, there was this. I remember specifically this area around. I think Astrib was the name of the beginning town, and just the few maps around it were free, and a stripe. There was a stripe, I think, that went towards the beach, and that was still free. And there were a lot of players farming there. I wonder if anyone got max level from fighting these low levels enemy over and over and over again. Probably. It was very popular. But on this beach, I remember there were tough enemies. I wonder if this was a paid area. Probably was, actually. Maybe only the dungeon was paid. And I found a lot there. It was a cool area, but that's not the point of this. But out of bounds in Monster Hunter games, at least in the old ones, you had these zones, and all around the zones you had the map, like you could see the landscape around them. Of course, you were stuck to the actual playable area, but you could see outside there, and if you could see outside there, you had the desire to like, oh my god, I want to explore. And yes, sure, it's a bit of the same as in Mario Sunshine, where you can see from a distance the different areas you can explore. But this felt a lot more, because this felt a lot more mysterious. You couldn't see exactly the areas you could move to from a distance. Unlike Mario Sunshine, where you could take a peek at the later levels. Here, you were on mountains, so you could see the mountain chain around your playable area, or the forest, or hills, or if you were like in a cliff forestry area, you could see at the bottom of the cliff a river with some herbivores eating and drinking. And you wish you could go there, but frankly, the only thing that could go there was like the flying monsters that you were fighting, that would fall out of the map, and somehow they would look much bigger than the surrounding environment, because everything was scaled down except the monster. It was interesting. But yeah, I bet you also had some experiences with these out of bounds area, the desires to clip out of there. When you discover actually that on in your field of view things are rendered, and if you somehow get past an invisible wall, suddenly it's a void where you fall indefinitely. Well, that loses a bit of the magic, like you start to see a bit more the zero and the ones, what composes the game. But here's the thing. Actually, that's funny. I was playing Okami a few months ago. I didn't finish it yet. I should finish it. And I was in a cave area, and somehow, because I am some sort of glitch hunter deep down, I managed to watch on my way up one of these cave walls with a tiny ledge that I could use to propel myself upwards. And I somehow managed to clip out of bounds, but there was nothing, and the floor beyond the point where I clipped, where I just faced through it, I fell down an infinite expanse. And you know, it's fascinating in a way, because thankfully the developers, when this happens, they tend to have a death barrier where you will die. You will respawn on a dry land where you will not sink deeper and deeper into nothingness. But it's kind of crazy that you could fall for quite a while, even in old consoles like the PlayStation 2, GameCube and all this. If you went out of bounds, sometimes you could keep walking and walking and walking. for a long time. And so the kind of like the playable place that was not intended for you was so much larger than the actual world map. So much empty space, so much more possibilities that could have been built in these areas. I am thinking about, I remember specifically Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on PlayStation 2. At one point I took a boat and I drove out at the sea. And I drove and drove that boat. But it never stopped. It never hit a wall. Now I wonder if it was an infinite expanse of water, or if at one point, if you kept going, it would like you would fall in a void, of like it gave you the illusion that you were still progressing towards the horizon, or if the current somehow like stopped your boat while it was still going, so you would not keep moving forward. I wonder if that would have been the case. But that's one of the examples that I mean when things felt so much bigger out of bounds somehow. Now, there were some creative things that prevented you from going out of bounds, like in Jack and Daxter, for example. There were some sea creatures that would eat you if you tried to go out of bounds. That was freaky, actually. Like that always freaked me out. If you fell in the water, you would not immediately get eaten. You could fly on your hoverboard on the surface of the water and all this, that would be cool. But if you crossed a certain threshold, or an immense tentacle would like pull you underwater, and well, you would die, of course, or a fish would jump you. And this is immensely fascinating, actually. These creative ways that developers have to prevent players from going out of bounds. And this goddamn tentacle just completely traumatized me as a kid. I think that's where my fascination for the Kraken came from. God, that will be a topic for another time, for sea games. Sea games that take place in bodies of water are terrifying. Very terrifying. But yeah, I've always had a fascination with out of bounds and unintended places you could access if you are hard-headed enough or stubborn and try your best to wedge yourself in a tiny glitch collision of the map. I do really like that, actually. What about you, actually? Have you experienced this before? Maybe you have. Maybe that's the case. I keep remembering Ocarina of Time and how it was such a sandbox for me. You know, that will also be a story for another time, how I just played the game, but played it in a way that I didn't search for collectibles, but created my own stories in Hyrule, with the different colors of tunics and all this. It was interesting, it was very nice and very cool. But 3D games always had, by their nature of being three-dimensional, this layout and this world building that just made you want more. You know, and in Ratchet and Clank 2, of course, you have these open areas, which was very nice, where you could collect some gems and crystals to get some exclusive upgrades for your gears and bonus weapons, I think. There was a desert one and a snow one, and they were pretty large areas, actually, with some tough enemies. But beyond this area, you would have wanted to see even beyond these deserts. You know, that's something I think Tears of the Kingdom, for the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I really would have wanted them to, first of all, make the sky a lot better than it was, but also expand the boundaries of Hyrule. I think that's such a missed opportunity, but that will be a topic for another time. But yeah, out of bounds. Very cool things, very cool concept. And actually there was this, I think there's an indie game that takes place in sort of a brutalist mega city architecture that just lets you explore anywhere. You could just fuck off and there would still be stuff to see and find out of bounds. Because the developers, I think, did understand this desire of player, this curiosity innate to those that aim to reach beyond the boundaries. I don't remember the name of the game, I've never played it, but this is an interesting concept. Alright. In any case, your progress has been saved. And I'll see you for the next save point, alright? Take care. Cheers.